having me.
Okay,
Great.
so let's start with a formal introduction. All right. So hello everyone, welcome back to yet another session of Founder Pakistan. This time around product and scaling products for millions of users. We have Umair with us, but before Umair's introduction, let's talk a bit about Founder Pakistan. Founder Pakistan is basically a talent-focused community. Our aim is to basically connect talent with Pakistani startups. Uh, and we have been doing so by organizing community meetups, networking sessions, and regular webinars and more. Coming towards Umair runs a venture studio by the name of Khudi Ventures. He has built thousands, many products, many software and app products, which have scaled to millions of products. Now on to you, Umair. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me the opportunity to speak. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job in terms of not only connecting the ecosystem, but allowing people to learn. I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time explaining what I do, like you have already explained. But these are some of the products that I worked at. I worked in grocery delivery space, fintech, a matrimony app. Currently working at a venture building studio. We build different technology products that have currently scaled to millions of users. And like you said, we will be talking about product and scale today. So I definitely have built a deck of sorts, but what I definitely don't want to do is to just go through the deck and we end the night there. What I want to do is that we can quickly go through this and keep this as interactive as possible. So these are some of the topics that we'll be sort of discussing. Generally, product and scale, kya hota hai? How do you sort of gather insights? What is product management? Why is product management important when you're looking to scale? What are some of the hacks and tips that you could sort of take out from this session? Most importantly, this is at the heart of what I really want to talk about, which is retention and monetization. Then there's data-driven decision making, and then really important thing that people a lot of time miss out on, which is team building. So some of the topics we definitely would want to discuss, but then eventually we'll open the floor for people to ask as many questions as they possibly can, given the time constraint. So generally, product management comes at the heart of product and scale. Around product management, you could talk about customers, market, strategy, business growth, there are releases happening, there's a market that can impact your product management, there's cross-functional leadership. Assuming that most of the people here are working in product or are sort of associated with product or are looking to move into product, I think most of you would understand product management, but how do you sort of manage a product in a way that you can not only grow but scale at large um, large database of users, right? And this is what we are going to talk about. Why do you need to understand product? Why do you want to understand product management? I think what's important is that when you're looking to scale, I think technology comes at the heart of it. Technology helps you scale. You can't really be scaling just without technology. So I think at the heart of it, technology comes really handy. And product is a byproduct of technology, and that can eventually not only help you acquire customers quickly, but also sort of convert them. And people miss out on the conversion part. People sort of miss out on the retention part, and this is really critical when you are sort of looking to scale. Um, when talking about, I apologize. Yeah. So when talking about market insight, I think it comes at a core of four topics. Uh, Going deep down into user behavior, people talk about data, people talk about insights, but I think what are users doing on your platform in order to be able to understand that, I think it comes at the core of understanding the market, right? Number two is like competitor analysis, not only understanding what your competitor is trying to do, but actually understanding what they are currently doing. So you could talk about what new features they are releasing, how are they strategizing, how are they monetizing, how are they converting the users, how is the exact customer experience like. And then third is you trying to understand feedback using your feedback loops. Most people would, I'm sure, understand feedback loops, but what's at the heart of understanding feedback is why do you want to understand feedback, and at what point in time do you want to track feedback. You'd have tons of data coming in, but how do you understand and how do you gather that feedback? The last one being trend spotting, which a lot of people miss out on, which basically means trying to understand what's happening in the market and what point in time, and how do you capture that trend, right? Um, then eventually talking about, a lot of people talk about MVP, right? Minimum viable product. Um, but how do you define an MVP, right? And how do you understand if you've reached an MVP stage? I think what comes at the core is understanding what's the core value proposition. What are you trying to offer? And how do you sort of define that and then achieve that? Uh, in order to achieve that, you go through rapid iterations, right? Where when people say iteration, it doesn't really mean that you have to have a massive change. Small little tweaks happening really rapidly every 3 days, every 4 days. When you are a small little startup, you don't know when would you reach an MVP. And in order to reach that stage, you have to do rapid iterations. You need to do a lot of tests. You need to learn as quickly as possible for you to be able to reach that stage, right? So in order to the sooner you reach that MVP stage, the sooner you can sort of try and scale. Until unless you are not able to reach that stage, scaling becomes really difficult, and you may not be able to acquire more customers, A, and then B, also convert them, right? So having the right resources with you, having the right tests, and quickly gathering data and then trying to understand that data would help you scale. So I think what's your MVP strategy comes at the core of scale also. Then eventually, while you're trying to sort of build the product, it's also important the approach that you have. So I think generally in terms of approach, you need to have an agile mindset. You can't really be rigid. You can't really be going straight forward. You have to take turns. You have to be rapid. You have to adapt according to new changes. You one night you may think X feature would work, then the next morning you think it won't work, right? So in order to have an agile mindset, you have to sort of prioritize your features. You have to be adaptable, not only in terms of the team that you are trying to build, but also in terms of the technical resources that you have, the tools that you have, right? So um, having those right resources in terms of technical and operational, I think agility would definitely help you scale. Unless you are agile, you cannot maneuver around things, and then scaling becomes not only tougher, but it would definitely take you a lot more time to sort of scale. Um, Secrets of scale, right? So scalable architecture. So when we say the word architecture, most people would understand it by the technical architecture or maybe the line of code that you write. So architecture may not just only be technological, but operational also, right? For example, if you're a grocery delivery startup, if you were to try and scale across Pakistan, how quickly can you set up stuff? Quickly can you try and acquire your supply? How quickly can you sort of set up all the operations, right? So I think having that scalable architecture across your organization, across your teams, would sort of help you scale. Performance monitoring, right? How quickly can you monitor your results, A, and then convert them into actionable results would definitely help. Because once you're trying to scale fast, what you're trying to understand is whatever you're doing at day one, can you do it at day two? Can you do it at day three? And if it's sort of not working, how quickly can you try and change that, right? So quick decision making would only happen if you are tracking and monitoring the not only the entire journey but the overall performance as well, right? And then the third thing is automated scaling, right? How quickly can you automate anything that's repeatable? So if you're doing A, B, and C, and you see that happening every day, and you sort of crack that code, how can you automate? Can you implement push notifications? Can you have a tool? If for example, you are doing it through a call center of sorts, can you have some robocalls implemented? Can you send out SMSs? So anything that's repeatable, can you try and automate that? That will definitely help you scale. This is my most favorite one, which is retention is a silent killer. So as much as they say acquiring new customers would help you scale, but until unless you can convert them and retain them, you will never be able to grow. So I think uh, retention is by far for me the most favorite part of growth, where if you are not able to convert your customers, you will not be able to grow. And in order to try and understand retention, what comes at the core of it is user engagement, right? So you need to first define what user engagement is. Is it just an app open? Is it someone using an app for 10 minutes? Is it someone ordering in? Is it someone ordering in for 10 times in a month, right? So you need to you need to define user engagement. That's number one. Number two, your user engagement metrics will definitely change uh, repeatedly. So what you are tracking today, you mean you that may eventually become outdated after a month. So you need to keep on iterating, keep on jumping onto new data. That's number one. Number two is like personalization. You can't really be applying one thing across all your users. So if you need to go at 1 million users, you can't really be doing what you were doing to one customer, right? So personalization comes at the heart of it. Personalization could be in terms of your app, your communication, your marketing, anything, right? So once you're trying to scale and you're trying to build a product, what you need to understand is that once you're trying to eventually acquire more people, you'll have to personalize their experience, personalize their conversion, and then only they will be able to retain on your product. Um, Number three is that, again, in order to do personalization, in order to track their data, you also need to understand what the user is saying about you. If you're looking to go at like 1 million users, eventually you may be acquiring 10,000 people every day, right? And 10,000 people would be spread across different cities, different demographics. You need to understand what they're saying about your product and then quickly try and fix that, right? And that can only happen through feedback loops. Feedback loops would tell you who is saying what about your product, right? And if you don't know what people are saying bad about your product, you will never be able to iterate, never be able to convert, never be able to sort of retain them also. And the last one, customer retention is sort of linked with customer acquisition also. So maybe if you're acquiring the wrong customer, you will never be able to retain them. So someone who may not be a right fit for a product, even if you acquire them, conversion and retention may be really poor. So you also need to figure out where your customer is coming from. Is he the right customer for a product also? Then comes monetization. Sooner the better, like I said. I think you need to start monetizing day zero. Day zero means as soon as you get your MVP rolled out. If you don't test out monetization, you will never be able to figure out if someone's willing to pay or not. So, and again, in terms of also monetization, it has to be iterative. You might as well need to change your prices. You might need to change it across different demographics. You need to diversify in terms of revenue streams. Maybe one day you are charging X amount. You need to increase the you may need to increase the amount, change the subscription plans. You may need to go at maybe a monthly package. So you need to experiment again. So the sooner you start monetizing, the more experimentation time you will have, and and sooner you would be able to scale. um we've talked about monetization, we've talked about retention. All of this is eventually connected with data. And everyone sort of talks about data, but I have a I've quite a different approach to that. Um, you might as well want to track data as much as you want, but until unless you convert that into actionable data, that's of no use. You can spend 10 hours trying to work on data. But if you don't understand what the data is saying and sort of convert that into actionable insights, there's no use of that data. So what's important is every time you sit on data, try and understand convert that into actionable items, prioritize those items, and work on them. So that's the core of why data is important. Data is only important when you want to take some action on that. And you can sort of try and convert that data into presentable graphs, which eventually is obviously data visualization. So I think data visualization will help you when you're trying to scale. When you have like millions of data points coming in, unless you have data visualization coming in, you would not be able to understand that data. You would not be able to convert that into actionable insights. So I think data visualization again is really important when you have large chunks of data coming in. Overcoming unseen challenges. So I think the moment you the moment you start to scale, right, you'd see you'd see changes and challenges that you may not have heard of before, right? So in order to mitigate them, you need to anticipate them in advance, right? So there could be changes that you would be doing, and if you are able to anticipate them well in advance, you would be able to sort of try and cope up with them. Risk mitigation strategies, right? So trying to understand risk once you're going at scale, what could happen, what could go wrong. Might as well get a lot of bugs in place. You might as well get a lot of incoming calls. So what are those potential risks depending on what the product is, what market you are in? So maybe you could be rolling out a marketing strategy that could go wrong. How would you try and, you know, manage crisis? How would you communicate interdepartmentally? How would you sort of try and discuss this with peers outside the organization? So I think this is really important. Before you start scaling, you have that crisis strategy in place, you have those risk mitigation strategies in place, and you understand the risk that the organization or the different departments that may be going through. So I think this is really important. Before you start scaling, you understand the challenges that could come in place. You also anticipate the change that could potentially happen. So these are some of the things that you should definitely keep in mind. Given so this was all I definitely wanted to highlight. But what I really want to do now is that we have a lot of people on the call from various backgrounds, right? You might as well be working on, each one of you would be sort of working on a different product in a different organization, from B2B to eventually B2C. Someone would be working on a SaaS product, and all of these things may or may not have been a summary of what you may want to apply at, right? And that is why I did not want to sort of generalize and kept it a really open session. And I'd like to open the floor for anyone to ask questions based on whatever product they are at. You may want to start off with some introduction about your product, and then we can try and contextualize that, keeping in view the session. Hello.
Yes, Umair.
Yeah. So we can have the questions now.
All right. So in the chat, can you all share your questions? If you have any
Yeah.
in the audience. Otherwise, in the meanwhile, I can share some questions which we received. Okay, so basically, our event form has a question field as well. So one of the questions we received there was, what factors play a major role in user retention? What design process fits best to scale a product, like agile design thing, etc.
Sorry, if you could come again. The first one was what impacts user attention, right?
Okay, so first one is, what factors play a major role in user retention? Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, okay. I think there are a series of things. I think number one is, if you have sort of reached MVP, have you built the right product? Number two is customer experience or user experience. And when I say customer experience, it doesn't only mean just the tech product. It's the entire process of customer awareness, conversion. How do you sort of communicate to the user? Um, is the user happy with you or not? Number two, I think obviously given that you're saying customer experience, the UI and UX is a critical part of your user retention. Number three, how hooked have you kept your user? Are you in touch with your user? How frequently are you talking to them? Are you matching their expectations or not, right? So having the right product doesn't really impact retention all in all, but what's important is to give them the right set of expectations and then matching them through the product. And I think this is the core of why a user would definitely retain on the product as compared to a competitor. What was the second question?
Thank you. Plus, if you have any questions, audience, please feel free to add them in comments in the chat. The second question was, what design process fits best to scale a product, like agile, design thinking, or anything else you would like to add?
So I would say it's a good balance between design thinking and agile, but again, depends on the sort of product that you're building on. If it's a product that needs quick scale and user design is something that you think that the users may be able to compromise on, I would definitely scale agile. But something that's something really new, people would want people are new to that particular sort of product in that particular market, then definitely design thinking would come in really handy. But in most cases, if you're trying to scale fast and it's not something new, I would say with going with the agile one.
Fair enough. That sounds good. Next question we had was how to create a product that can derive conversions on its own, PLG, and hence increase retention. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say um I would say automating as much communication and as much marketing as you can. So which basically means using product marketing techniques, using push notifications, trying to automate throughout your user journey based on data, obviously. So I think automating journeys would definitely help you convert users, but in order to acquire, you'd need to try initially have growth hacks, then convert those growth hacks into repeatable marketing channels, trying to acquire as many as users as you can within the same budget that you may have, and minimize down on the customer acquisition cost.
Fair enough. So we have one question in the chat. Do you think a personal global representation is important before showcasing a digital product on social media platform? Question by Umair.
Sorry, if you could come again.
You can see in the chat as well. Plus, do you think a personal or global reputation is important before showcasing a digital product on social media platform? It's more toward the marketing side of things, basically.
What I would recommend is that I think before you go global, I think what's important is to crack the local market first. Have your economic set, try and track the entire customer journey, customer experience. If you think you have sort of cracked it overall, then go global. I think that would be a better approach.
All right. So next one we have is, can you talk about some of the mistakes you made or have observed in product journeys? What were your learning example would help?
Definitely. I think great question. So, while scaling, I think back in the day, what most product people or most ops people would definitely do is that trying to scale things that with trying to scale things without understanding data, right? So, for example, we would think that we are trying to acquire the right customers and we are bringing in the right people, but and then we try and acquire more people on top of that, right? But without having to understand the entire conversion funnel. So, I'll give you an example of a real example. So, we were initially trying to build on this Rishta app, the matrimony one that we have launched. It's called Dil Ka Rishta. And back in the day, we got quite happy with acquiring a lot of people, but what we really forgot was the fact that would we be able to entirely convert them and retain them throughout that time. So I think while we were scaling fast, conversion may have become the second priority for us. But I think what's most important is to understand the customer journey, try and convert them as quickly as possible, and trying to crack that conversion code for you before you start scaling. So I think scale comes second, conversion comes first in terms of growth.
All right. So the next one we have is when we launched an MVP, how we add features it to make a complete product.
Um, so the journey post MVP and eventually trying to crack the entire product is a longer one, to be honest. And I'd say there's no complete definition of a product. Why? Because once you're scaling, you are acquiring new sets of customers, you are acquiring new markets, you are trying to add on to new features. So every time you try and add a new feature, that may not be a fine product. Why? Because you may realize, hey, that may not have been the right product, or maybe I'm not acquiring the right customer. So I think there's no right or wrong answer to that. The only best approach is to try and understand data, try and understand user feedback, and then keep on iterating. I think there's no best product. Facebook still adds new features, removes old features. So I think the product can be only as good as the previous one.
That sounds good. So the next question is around some guidelines for scaling physical products, especially in B2B market.
Mm, or is okay, some guidelines for scaling physical products. I don't understand physical. Okay. To be honest, I'm not a relevant guy for P2P, for a B2B market, but what I understand from the question is that they are trying to understand scaling physical products.
Basically, he's talking about he's not talking about software products, anything other than software, basically.
So other than software, I think in order to try and scale, I think again, how do you sort of reach out to the right market? Once you say scale, for example, I'll give you an example. If you initially think that you want to launch in Lahore with a physical product, right? Where in Lahore would you want to launch at, right? And why is that the best decision? Number one. Number two, trying to understand um, how do you launch, right? What is it that is required for you to be able to launch? Number two. Number three, trying to understand the sort of resources that may be required for you to scale. Do you need more manpower? Do you need more technology? Do you need more money in terms of marketing? And what and where does that money sort of get deployed at with the best output, right? So input versus output would be really helpful, and then trying to understand that data. Are you getting enough output with the same input, with the same resources? And once that's done, try and automate that as much as possible, either through repeatable resources, either through marketing tools, anything that you could do to try and automate, and then leave that and go on to and find a new market or a new set of customers.
All right. Abdul Sabur, I think that's your name. Abdul Sabur, if you would like to elaborate on that, or if you think you can basically clarify your questions, you
Sure,
can.
sure, sure, sure. Thank you so much, Umair, for answering the question. This is Abdul Sapoor. I'm the co-founder of Banasir. It's a startup based in Islamabad. What we have done is we have an MVP ready. We are utilizing waste banana trunks, जो कि ज़्यादातर सिंध में प्रोड्यूस होती है और उनको at the end of the life cycle वो जो ट्री जो होती है उसको burn कर दिया जाता है. So rather than burning, we're taking it in और उसको हम convert करें into fibers, जो कि आगे clothing में use किया जा सकता है. So the B2B market, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Right, can you say something? Okay, perfect. So our B2B market जो आती है, वो आती है that the fiber is then to be used by industries mostly targeting Faisalabad, जो कि आगे उसी fiber को अपने existing infrastructure पे use करके उससे clothing में convert कर सकते हैं, either clothing or home textile. So I think that would be 1 or 2 minute explanation of what a product is in the target market. So these are the textile manufacturers, mostly based out of Faisalabad.
Okay. And do you have any other question?
No, I think you've answered that wonderfully, and I've received some guidelines. as to how to scale and how to balance out on the inputs and outputs. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Great. So the next question we have is, how did you monitor and optimize your product's performance to ensure a seamless user experience?
I think generally trying to understand initially define the whole user journey. So from the point we start interacting with the customer up until the point the user sort of churns out. I think breaking down that journey and then trying to convert them into metrics. So for example, if a user signs up until the point the user maybe uninstalls or sort of deletes the app, right? So I think breaking down that entire journey, converting them into metrics, b, c is you can't really be tracking everything on a daily basis, right? So maybe converting them into metrics that you could convert into dashboards that you could sort of try and track on a daily basis. Maybe having 4 or 5 high level KPIs or metrics that could sort of show you A, customer acquisition, B, conversions, and C, retention, and then trying to understand high level data through that. And if you see something goes off, then you try and go deeper into data because you can't really be going deep into data every day because you're trying to solve for so many things, right? You're trying to market, you're trying to sort of do product, operation, scale. So I think trying to convert data into high level metrics, trying to track that. And if you see something goes off on a single day, then going deeper into it.
All right. I think Zersh has raised her hand. She might want to ask a question.
Yeah, I have two questions. I'll just give a small introduction of the context where they're coming from. So, I recently joined a fintech startup as a product designer,
Hmm.
and currently the services that they provide are CDM, so cash deposit machines, and CIT, which is cash in transit, and then we're expanding into payments platform and lending as well.
Okay.
So my first question is that you mentioned that there should be like rapid iterations and then a lot of testing and learning. Something that I've been coming across a lot is that we do have rapid iterations in design and we do have a lot of testing, but most of it is always internal. So the product team or the engineering team or the ops team gets together and then we like test out things and see what works and what doesn't work and what the customer might like or not like. So
Yeah.
since we don't have, so we're onboarding banks and some NBFCs, but most of the users there are already used to how do you say, using these payment systems. They're not entirely new to these things, so we don't get a lot of novel or critical feedback.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you don't have like when your product isn't live and you don't have customers onboarded already, how do you test in the early stages?
Yeah, I think what I'd suggest is that maybe having a couple of people you could sort of potentially partner with or maybe make good friends with. And if you could sort of, so we had a similar challenge while we were making a matrimony app, and we wanted to launch this as a B2B play, right? And we did not have the users with us. We did not know where they were. And we were just making the product based on mere assumptions as to what we thought the user would like, right? And the best thing I think would be either to quickly launch and put it in the hands of the user, A, or B, if you're trying to design and keep it really internal, maybe partner with a couple of people or a couple of organizations. And if you're good friends with them, um, you could sort of try and understand their feedback before launch.
Right. So uh, the second question was about what about products or services where automation can't happen much and it has to be manual for most of the time? So for example, a cash deposit machine and how it works, it has to be, most of it is like, some aspects of it are automated, yes, but there's a lot of manual work that goes into it. The second part of this question is kind of linked to the first one, is um have you ever come to a conclusion that you shouldn't scale a product or service, and what were the reasons behind it, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Okay, I'll come to the first one, and you're right. There are certain products or there are certain services that would definitely require time for product building, right? But what's important is that you don't keep on iterating. So when I say iteration is important, it doesn't mean that you keep on building the same thing again and again. When I say iteration, it basically means you build something, you let it go into the hands of the user, you get feedback, and then try and iterate. So maybe building or optimizing on your product development process would definitely help. So if you're doing something in a month, how can you do that in maybe 25 days, right? So I think it's not just about quickly iterating, it's also about building the right thing. And just to be sure, so having those processes in place, are you building a product requirement document? Are you talking to your customers? Are you building with the right set of processes, right? So I think product development, not only in terms of product management, comes at the core of scaling relatively quicker, right? So there are certain things that would hinder your growth, obviously being in a physical product-based startup. But what's important is that you build the right structure, uh, given the constraint. That's for question one. But uh, if you could come again with question two, if
It was about, have you ever come to a conclusion or a situation where you decided that you shouldn't scale a product or service?
yeah, yeah.
And what were the reasons behind deciding that?
I think there could be more than a couple of reasons. I think the first one being that if you try and understand that, hey, like I earlier mentioned, okay, we realize that we currently aren't able to convert them. We are sort of looking to scale just in terms of acquisition. We are acquiring a lot of customers, but we aren't able to convert them. Then okay, let's stop scaling for now. Let's have a good conversion strategy for us. Conversion could also be in terms of, you know, monetization. Conversion could be in terms of dropping users into the next bucket of the funnel. I think but what's important is that if you're not able to convert them, B, your conversion funnel is broken, C, you aren't able to retain them. So I think retention, conversion, monetization, if that's broken, I think that you should definitely shouldn't scale. B is the fact that when you say scale, you might as well be going into new markets, right? And if you think the current market is large enough, why do you want to scale to a new market, right? So if you have enough market size currently available in the market that you're operating at, that could be the second reason. The third reason is that you're trying to scale, but your architecture is not ready, right? You're not ready in terms of operations. You're not ready in terms of anything that could go wrong. Your strategy is sort of failing. So you need to take a step back. You need to try and understand if everything is in place and then try and scale.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Well done.
I think Isa had a question as well. Isa, can you unmute and ask?
Hello, Umair. Thank you so much for this session. It's really interesting and very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
I'd just like to ask one question: that how important do you think is following or working on the emerging trends? Uh, do you think it is? Considering that probably the emerging trends are not much relevant to the direct vision or the direct problem that your product is solving, but uh, like it based on if you want to scale your product or if you want to reach out to million of users, you'd have to focus on the emerging trends or the different developments that are happening around the world. So, based on your experience, what do you think should be the balance between feature development and following the emerging trends?
I would recommend कि when you say emerging trends, I think emerging trends are great to have, but until unless those trends are relevant to you. So, for example, if something's happening in US in terms of AI, right, and it has nothing to do with what you are trying to build for, I think that's a great emerging trend, but it has nothing to do with what you're working on. But if something's happening in Pakistan, in maybe e-commerce, and you're a fashion commerce brand, I think that's definitely relevant to you. If something's happening in maybe India, and they are maybe, for example, 5 years ahead of us, and that's an emerging trend, you may need to sort of start working on that today so that 5 years later you can quickly try and catch up on that. So I think what's important is relevancy, I think, in terms of catching on to trends. Trends are great, but you need to find the right relevance.
Okay, thank you so much, Umair. Thank you.
Okay, so Umair, are you tired right now, or can we continue with some
No,
other
I'm
questions?
perfectly fine, as long as the audience is also.
Okay, cool. So I am not sure if this question is already covered in your slides, but one of the questions remaining in Luma form was, what are the challenges faced in scaling and how to address them proactively?
What are the challenges faced in scaling?
Yeah.
I think number one is trying to capture all the data, right? Once you're trying to scale fast, you are so caught up in the operational side of things, trying to align marketing, trying to align product, trying to roll out quick releases as much as you can. You're acquiring so many people. I think number one is to capture all the data. Number one, number two, find insights quickly and iterate, because once you're going fast, you sort of lose a bit of agility. You just go fast and straight, right? So I think number one, that, and then number two, conversion and monetization, again, retention. People sort of try and correlate customer acquisition with scale, which necessarily is not true. So I think the biggest challenge that we've currently also discussed today is conversion when you're trying to scale. Retention sort of gets broken. People are not able to convert those customers timely. That could be primarily because of maybe bad product, operations not being ready. You did not plan it well. You thought you would be able to acquire 10,000, but you're just acquiring maybe 8,000, and you are either overutilized or underutilized. There are things happening that you did not expect, right? So I think a bunch of challenges, but primarily lack of conversion is the topmost one.
Great response. So this one was by me. I decided to ask this question. So basically, you run a venture studio yourself, and do you think venture studio still remains in 2023 a buzzword in Pakistan? Plus, how would you basically differentiate this model with incubator and accelerator? Because I feel like a lot of people are still unaware how is venture studio different from an accelerator or an incubator.
No, great question. So I think trying to separate out what an accelerator or an incubation center or a venture studio is, I think venture studios are quite nascent here in Pakistan. Unlike an accelerator or an incubation center, venture studios sort of help build new products for founders, right? So you don't sort of incubate like an accelerator. You sort of are working with the team to help build a product. In our case, Khudi Ventures is more of a corporate venture building studio. We don't incubate new startups. We have a series of ideas that we want to work on. We hire people full time, they work with us, and we try and build those products. Unlike an accelerator, where the role of an accelerator or an incubation center is more of a support function rather than sort of building it. So I think venture studios are more executional. They help mitigate risk because they've sort of done it before, and they are sort of very focused as compared to accelerators. Accelerators or incubation centers may be working with 40, 50 different odd startups. Venture studio work with a bunch of ideas, close to 4 to 5 in maybe in a year. So that's how they're different.
Great. I think there are only 4 to 5 venture studios in Pakistan. If can you correct me on the figures? So
I'm not too sure, but I currently know of three, including ourselves. I think there's Neem, there's Alt, there's Khudi Ventures, Yeah, that's what I know about.
Sahi, pretty good. Okay, so this is one question we ask to every speaker. What are your basically top three advices for folks who are starting out and interested in startups?
And is this particularly for people who are founders or they're looking to work in startups?
No, I can basically see a couple of students here, so this could be more towards aspiring startup people who aspire to work in startups, basically.
To work in startups, right? Not as founders.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think the first thing is that don't try and define your role at day one. Keep your hats open. Go with an agile mindset, have a growth mindset in place, and just don't try and put yourself into a box. That's one. Number two, always have a learning mindset. Whatever you try and do, always think that I need to come out of this, even with a failure or a win. I want to learn something out of it. Day in, day out. That's two. Number three is to try and improve every single day. So whatever you effort that you put in yesterday, you need to keep on increasing on a daily basis. You can't be sort of putting yourself on monthly, yearly, or a quarterly goals. Startups are fast paced, unless you improve on daily basis, you wouldn't be able to catch up with the sort of pace that the startups expect. So I think you can't really be laid back. You need to gear up, pull up your socks, be really fast paced, need to quickly learn, and need to sort of match the pace of at what the startups are operating at, rather than sort of pulling yourself back. So I think being agile, being fast paced, and having a learning mindset would definitely help.
All right. Thank you so much, Umair. That was a very well thought out response. Thank you for the great session, by the way. And I think that is the end of it. Audience, please feel free to leave any feedback you may have, claps, hearts, whatever works. Yeah, I think that was a great session. Just to share again about Founder Pakistan, we regularly organize events. You can visit at Luma, lu.ma at Founder Pakistan. Our newsletter is called Motively. Then we have our job board, jobs.founderpakistan.com. We have recently launched our internship board as well, jobs.founderpakistan.com/ascent. Thank you so much, Umair. Again, this was Umair from Khudi Ventures, and this is Rahim signing out.